Welcome back. With a vaccine mandate now in place, leading up to this, some Canadians have been finding themselves fighting their organizations, relying on Section 7 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the right to life, liberty, and freedom. I recently spoke with Calgary Constitutional and human rights lawyer Carol Crosson on the issue. Here's part 2 of that interview. So, Carol, are provincial governments bound by our charter rights then, or is it that the charter upholds citizens' rights in spite of what the government attempts to place on us?
I think the strongest footing we have against governments is under Section 7, that we should not be forced. I mean, Section 7 was at play with the euthanasia debate. It's been at play with the abortion debate. It's that my body, my choice extends past ideas about specific medical treatments like abortion, but many would say that includes that applies to any medical treatment, that we should be able to decide. The government shouldn't decide for us. And Jeannette, what I'm worried about is this idea that today that may be right for one sector of the population and not the other, but tomorrow, are we going to like it when the government steps in to tell us what to do with another medical choice? I don't think so.
So, on the employment side of this issue, then, can an employer mandate that the employee receive a vaccine? And can an employee use a threat of terminating employment to coerce that employee to receive the vaccine?
The issue is whether that would be dismissal for cause, whether that could be appropriate. I think there's a lot of uncertainty so that employers, if they did terminate on that basis, they'd have to pay severance. That's my understanding. But the strongest footing an employee has is under very established human rights legislation that if they fit under a protected ground under that legislation, and in every province, the protected grounds that would be relevant here are disability, or medical and religious belief or conscientious belief.
Okay, so then would this be considered a human rights violation then?
I think human rights is the strongest law that would be relevant in the employment context, yes.
So, what can an employee do if their employer is requiring them to get the vaccine no matter what?
Well, if they're in an employment context, some of them are writing to their employer preemptively to say, this is my position. They're often gathering other fellow employees around them and writing preemptively to say, thank you so much for respecting our rights in the workplace. We support our rights being upheld in the workplace, to kind of preempt moves. And then if they are hit with a vaccine mandate, many employees are writing to say, or having lawyers write to assert the principled rights they have under the charter, although those technically will not apply if they're in a private employment context. Their rights to informed consent, any exemptions that they think they qualify under human rights legislation.
Well, it might be too late for that in some of these cases, but outside of an employment context, how can Canadians who choose to remain unvaccinated for whatever their reasons, how can they maintain their right to go about their business as usual, especially now that many private entities are requiring that proof of vaccine?
I am hearing, Jeannette, about even at this early stage, a lot of businesses in BC that are saying, I'm not turning people away. I'm not asking for their passes. So it's nice to see Canadians standing for freedom. I really hope Canadians prize their freedom. It's precious. We can lose it so easily.
Carol Crosson, thanks so much for joining me. That was constitutional and human rights lawyer Carol Crosson out of Calgary. For 18 months now, Albertans have navigated the realities of COVID-19. And Dr. Jason Kindrachuk, an assistant professor at the Department of Medical Microbiology and Infectious Diseases for the University of Manitoba, wishes that Alberta had followed Manitoba's strategy, where they launched their reopening plan in the early summer, but then quickly reinstituted their restrictions.
I think right now it is about how do you manage control of transmission, also knowing that you're potentially going to exhaust your hospital, basically your healthcare system within the span of the next week and a half or so. And we know that changes that come into effect now probably aren't going to make much of a dent in transmission, probably in terms of numbers for at least the next couple of weeks.
Up next, Alberta legislative and National Post reporter Tyler Dawson with some insights into our federal election. Stay with us.